California during the course of the debate. Voter registration was up there very high, today being National Register to Vote Day. People may have been watching the debate and thinking, I really need to make sure that I'm registered to vote, depending on whatever your political allegiance is. Police issues in there, police brutality, police shootings were some of the top searches. ISIS was up there, and terrorism. The national debt of the United States, which was talked about a number of times, and immigration. Those were among the top issues that were searched for in California. And if we look nationally, just in terms of how the candidates compared with search interest, it was about a 60-40 split, with Hillary Clinton coming out ahead with 60% of the search interest versus Donald Trump at about 40%, and very similar sort of numbers in California.
Now, were there any stark differences between California and other states? Anything that really popped here that really was not on the radar for other folks?
Well, immigration was one of the issues that was searched for more in California than in a number of other states. Certainly there are some obvious sort of geographical reasons for that, and people just interested in that as a topic. And you know, there were trending questions, though, that appeared in California, but then also across the country as well, including things like, you know, what emails did Hillary Clinton delete? How much does Hillary Clinton make? But we also saw questions around Donald Trump with things like who has endorsed Donald Trump? How is Donald Trump doing in the debate? Why is Donald Trump sniffing? So a mix of questions about their personal life in some cases. People were looking up Hillary Clinton's father after she mentioned his work in the drapery industry, right through to their professional career. And of course, they both have a long history and a lot of experience for people to comb through.
Did you see a lot of fact checking? A lot of people typing in, was Trump a supporter of Iraq, for example? Those sort of obvious fact checking questions.
Exactly, and we saw, you know, I think most people's experience these days is a very second screen one, where you've got your laptop or your smartphone while you're watching the debate on live stream or on television. So yeah, everything from did Donald Trump support the war in Iraq, you know, what happened in Benghazi as people try to figure out that issue as it's tied to Hillary Clinton. And really this is it illustrates the opportunity and the power of search to put this kind of information in people's hands virtually in real time as they're watching these debates, and it's an opportunity to, you know, for their own edification, but then also to potentially share that across social media and understand what else people are talking about. But it's a powerful way to kind of get involved with the democratic process.
Now, geographically, we talked a little bit about California. Were there search terms that were really prominent in one sort of quadrant or region of the United States that were pronounced in maybe the South versus the Northeast, Midwest, et cetera?
Perhaps surprisingly not that much of a difference between some of the different regions in the country. Fairly consistently we saw those issues like voter registration, like ISIS and police shootings and that kind of thing come up. A lot of it reflected what the candidates were talking about, so that probably drove a lot of the online conversations, even if, you know, regionally there may have been other issues that were arguably more important to people who live there. They weren't brought up in the context of the debate. But it certainly, you know, there were just a whole range of topics that captured people's interest. And sometimes it was acronyms or terms that people may not have been as familiar with. For example, NAFTA or NATO or TPP. You know, these were very quickly sort of thrown out there by the candidates without necessarily a lot of context for some people. So they took that opportunity to say, what is TPP again? And you know, this is the kind of thing that you may not post about on social media asking your friends what it is, but you have the opportunity to go and use Google and understand it on your own.
Now, were there any surprises? Anything you saw in the data that sort of struck you?
You know, I would say that it's, you know, there are always a few surprises here and there, I suppose. You never know quite what the candidates are going to say or what's going to resonate with people. I think that you know, for some people, the outcome in terms of the search interest between the two candidates may be somewhat surprising, just because it is somewhat rare that this is only the 5th time in 2016 that Hillary Clinton has surpassed Donald Trump nationally in search interest. So that is, for some observers, that may be a little bit surprising, and you can't necessarily associate a positive or negative sentiment with this sort of thing, but that's certainly something that for some people stood out.
Now, you've been tracking this for many years over there at Google. How do this year's results compare to, for example, the first or other debates in 2012, for example?
Well, I think that we've seen certainly an increase in searches around the election, politically oriented topics compared to 2012. Part of that is the fact that more people these days have a smartphone and have access to the internet while they're watching television, and we're just more connected as a society than even we were 4 years ago. I think that perhaps what's also interesting is that both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have obviously been in the political spotlight, the public spotlight, for quite some time, and yet there's still a considerable amount of search interest that's happening around issues that people may have had some peripheral understanding of, or we may have thought we knew something about it, but we're taking the opportunity to use Google and to use search to really understand those more, which I think is arguably an encouraging sign this election season, that people really want to get to know these candidates and get to know where they stand on these issues, and that there's an opportunity to get to that quality, accurate, and relevant information in a timely way, and even almost in real time as they're talking during a debate.
Now, I want to ask you about some specific terms and see whether these were Googled enough to get onto your radar. Birther, were people searching for information about that? That's a term I think that people use that not everyone understands what it means.
Yeah, I don't have any data that illustrates that as a particular term, I'm afraid. Okay. But certainly that as a larger issue that has been in the news recently was searched. I don't have the exact numbers on that, I'm afraid, though.
Well, of course. What about stop and frisk? Was there activity around that you noticed?
Yeah, so stop and frisk was one of the top fact-checked questions, if you will, and it was associated with both candidates. So we saw people searching for it tied to Hillary Clinton and to Donald Trump, and mainly, is stop and frisk constitutional? And there was a debate during the debate about it that included at one point the moderator Lester Holt, and had continued on even after the debate. So that is something that is going to continue. I think people were interested both in what stop and frisk means exactly, just from a legal standpoint, but then when you add in the constitutional layer, I think people wanted to understand some of that part of it as well.
What was the level of interest in Lester Holt?
We saw some interest in Lester Holt, and in fact, even leading into the debate, we saw a lot of questions around, what will Lester Holt ask? Will he be an effective moderator? I think people know him as the anchor of the NBC Nightly News, but they wanted to get a sense of kind of his style and how he might perform. And so he was certainly among the top searches, if you will, tied to the debate.
Now, how many people, or if you know, or was there much interest in the word braggadocious?
Yeah, there was certainly interest in that. We saw people searching for it if it was mentioned during the debate. And it's one of those things that people were either curious about, hadn't heard of before, and wanted to learn more about it. So it's we see that with everything from a policy term like TPP, or even an organization like ISIS. People may not be familiar with what exactly that stands for. So lots of reasons that people turn to search to try to understand something.